Our government rushed to join international agreements where the United States pays the costs and bears the burdens. This includes deals like the one-sided Paris Climate Accord, where the United States pays billions of dollars while China, Russia, and India have contributed and will contribute nothing.
Well, moments ago, President Trump did fulfill a campaign promise, announced he indeed is pulling out of this agreement put in place by President Obama. And the market today, seeing through the whole thing, shaking off any worries from critics. It was very interesting to watch the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ trade on the day, all closing at record highs. Ahead of tomorrow's monthly jobs report, here's the president moments ago.
In order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
And with that, we welcome you to Risk and Reward. I'm Connell McShane on a busy evening in for Deirdre Bolton. President Trump announcing the U.S. will pull out of this global climate deal. We look at green energy stocks, something of a mixed reaction. The ones you have up now, though, were all higher on the day. First Solar closing, meantime, slightly lower on the day. See the big energy stocks like Exxon and BP up. First Solar down, SunPower up. Tesla's an interesting one to watch, isn't it? Down by 64 cents today. Remember, the Tesla CEO and the Apple CEO, it should be pointed out, advised President Trump to stay in this Paris deal. Now, Elon Musk of Tesla, he just tweeted out, this was just a few minutes ago, I am departing presidential councils. He promised to do that. Climate change, he says, is real. Leaving Paris not good for America or the world. Elon Musk. Apple, well, its stock today closed a bit higher. The Tesla share price, though, as we say, down 64 cents. Competitive Enterprise Institute energy analyst Chris Horner starts us off with all of these developments. Chris, good to see you. I think the president, in his remarks, and for our purposes, I think it makes sense, made this an economic issue, pulling out of the Paris climate deal. So, from your perspective, the economics of it, good or bad for the U.S.?
Pulling out is very good. Now, there are individual companies that obviously were premised upon rents that they would receive from this scheme, not expecting any politician to actually derail the gravy train. So, but on the whole, obviously, if you are removing an impediment to a self-imposed restriction on the most abundant, affordable, reliable energy sources and forcing us onto intermittent, unreliable, expensive ones, obviously that's better for the economy.
How do you quantify that? I mean, is it good energy companies can make a lot more money, essentially, is what you're saying, because of this, or is it just something that we're making too big of a deal of today?
No, it's only good for people who use energy, which is, of course, all of us. And it's a feedstock. It's a major input into an awful lot of what we do. We do still have an awful lot of people in this country who make stuff and dig stuff and build stuff, and it requires energy. The U.S. has a tremendous energy cost advantage, which this sought to erase. That was actually the point. I don't want people to forget. Several years ago, just a very few, the UN official in charge of designing the future economy, believe it or not, Otmar Edenhofer, said this isn't about the environment, has very little to do with the environment. This is about de facto redistributing the world's wealth. And the EU climate minister, Margot Wallström, said it's about leveling the playing field. This was always about removing our cost advantage. Remember, the Europeans have done this to themselves. Other parties are saying if we don't do it, it's unfair. Why are they saying that? Because this was aimed at reducing our energy cost advantage. That's what it was about.
That redistribution argument is exactly the argument the president put forth today. Let me go to Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, on all of this. He was just on the Fox Business Network, and here's what he had to say about the developments of the day, the Treasury Secretary.
I think it makes no sense, and people who quote that, I think, are living in the Stone Ages. We're about creating economic growth, we're about broadening the base, and we're going to make sure that this is tax reform, not just tax cuts, and that they're paid for.
Okay, so then he was talking about tax reform there, and he said about, he talked about the climate deal as well, in terms of this is just, or was a bad deal. In other words, and I think this is what you were getting at a little bit, Chris, this is not necessarily that an administration that's anti-environment It's an administration that wants a better deal in place. That's what they're arguing.
Please remember, wealthier is healthier, wealthier is cleaner. Go to a rich community, go to a poorer country. You know that rich societies pay more to clean up various environmental media. The poorer you are, the more you focus on first-order needs. The richer you are, you measure in the parts per billion, trillion, and quadrillion to regulate. This is about wealth creation, which makes us healthier, greener, and cleaner. Now, you're talking about the Trump, remember the Trump bump and all of the optimism that came with his deregulatory agenda? Much of that is in peril if we stayed in this. We have attorneys general whose documents have been released through FOIA requests showing that they're organizing to enforce this thing. Just because it's not legally binding, as one court recently said in The Hague, doesn't mean you don't have to do it. And we've got courts waiting for this. We've got AGs hoping to use it as a hook. And today the president said, you're going to have to find another hook to stop my deregulatory agenda. Good for him.
Interesting. We did see at least a bump on a daily basis in the stock market, as we already talked about. Now, the other side of it, Chris, you know, the Democrats are making what are, quite frankly, predictable comments about the pullout from the Paris deal. And the comments, many of them, were made even before the president made it official. Listen.
It would send to the rest of the world a message that the United States does not care about this planet that we all share.
This is no longer, oh, he's doing his thing. This is endangering the world.
If we stand alone to face this global crisis, it's more than reckless. I mean, we are really endangering the planet, the American people, and our economy at a really fragile stage.
Adding to that, Democratic mayors speaking out, and many of them essentially made the case that cities will now take up this cause.
They're welcome to
This is a dagger aimed straight at the heart of New York City. Donald Trump is from New York City. He should know better. He makes no sense. It's dangerous. And we in New York City are going to have to take matters into our own hands. And by the way, that's what cities all over the country and all over the world are going to do. That's what states and provinces are doing. It shouldn't be this way, but it's what's necessary.
No matter what the president decides, I want to make it absolutely clear that the White House and our partners worldwide that the city of Boston will not back down. I call on cities nationwide to do the same.
Chris Horner, let me make this the final point then in our conversation. The cities and the mayors taking this into their own hands and possibly more local regulations. What do you make of it?
They're welcome to do it. They won't have it held against them as the federal government, the taxpayer, would through agencies. Any movement premised on do what I want or everybody dies obviously doesn't have confidence in its arguments. There was no projected climate impact from this. There's no projected climate impact from the U.S. withdrawing.
Chris, thank you. Chris Horner, it's good to talk to you tonight. We appreciate your perspective on a very busy day.